Hello, my friends. Uh, Today is a very somber morning, hence the color gradient. I'm in mourning right now for my best friend, Marcel Proust, who died 100 years ago in 2 months. So I guess 99 years and 10 months ago, my best friend passed away, and I learned about it a few years ago. I was greatly shocked and surprised to find out about his death. And then a few weeks ago, I was reading a book. This is called Marcel Proust by Celeste Albaret, who was Proust's, I guess, live-in assistant. She made his coffee. She gave him his croissants and cleaned out the house, made sure that there wasn't too many drafts, made sure that nothing smelled wrong, made sure none of the neighbors made too much noise. You know, all the things that you need a person to do when you are Marcel Proust. And I've read this book before. I was reading it for a second time. And I don't know, it hit me particularly hard this time. Maybe I'm getting old. But at the end of the book, when Marcel Proust passes away finally, I cried again. I cried for the first time. You know, the first time I read this, I didn't cry. And you want to know why? It's because I was 22 years old, and 22-year-olds can't cry. It's just impossible. I remember as a 22-year-old, I wanted to cry all the time, and I never could. So anyway, that's why I'm sad, and that's why the color has been drained from my life. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about this book. You know, I read In Search of Lost Time when I was 21 years old, and I gotta say, that's the kind of book you want to read when you're in your 20s, I think, or your early 20s, even your teens, if you find out about it earlier than I did. Proust, even though he wrote In Search of Lost Time when he was in his 40s, it is very much a book about being young. You know, he's looking back on the times of his youth, and maybe because of his isolation from society. You know, Proust, he was asthmatic, had chronic asthma throughout his life, and then eventually it got so bad that he became entirely bedridden. Couldn't leave the house. Well, he could leave. I mean, he left the house sometimes, but he'd have asthma attacks, and it was a big pain in the rear end. And so he was bedridden, sitting by himself, lying in bed, just writing this book about his whole life and all the things that he used to think about, still thought about, all the things that had happened to him and the people he knew, and his memories, the mistakes he had made along the way, the things he had loved. Yes, but particularly the first two books. Particularly the second book, in which Proust is in his early teens, and he's staying at a hotel on the French coast. I think the northern coast. I don't really know. And he meets some girls, and he's sitting on the beach, and he sees these girls, like, God dang it, I wish I had some friends. You know, we've all been there. And then eventually he just becomes friends with these girls totally by accident. You know, he schemes and schemes to try to figure out how to get close to them, and then it just sort of happens. And then suddenly he's friends with them, and he's figures out what they're truly like. It's just a very it's a novel about just being young and not really understanding what you're doing, and how to understand people. It's very beautiful. Anyway, so I read that when I was 21, and I I was just, I felt like I had such a strong connection to this man. I felt like I understood him, and that perhaps he would have understood me had he not died uh, 73 years prior to my birth. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I'm deep. I think it's very difficult to read In Search of Lost Time and not, or finish it and not feel a deep connection to Proust, because it is so long, because you get so much of him, because you see his whole life. It's hard not to feel a strong connection. And this book, well, Sir Proust by Celeste Albury, is written by someone with a very deep connection. Obviously, she lived with him for almost a decade, and knew about his every whim and every need, and probably understood him better than anyone else did. And so while reading In Search of Lost Time, you do get a connection. By reading this book, you get a new perspective, a different perspective. You see a new side of him. And he comes across as a strange man, but a very charming individual. Obviously with certain foibles and certain characteristics, certain peculiarities or particularities in terms of his lifestyle. Once he settled into a routine, it was very hard to separate him from it, which is something that I can relate to. He was just such a nice guy. He was such an interesting fellow. And when I was in my early 20s, I really wanted to be like him. I wanted to have asthma, and I wanted to be bedridden. Maybe not asthma, maybe something else. I didn't know what particular illness I wanted. I wanted an illness, and I wanted to be dying so that I could write books. Little did I know that you can actually write books while alive. I've learned this recently, and it was quite a revelation to me that you don't have to be dying to write books. But I don't really have anything to say. I'm just greatly saddened. I feel like a lot of the time these old authors are the only people that I really understand in this world, or that seem to make any god dang sense to me at all. Which is a weird feeling, but I guess it's nice that there's someone I can understand. It's nice to have at least a few people. So that's all. This is in memoriam of this man, and that's all I gotta say about that.